This family feud is taking over the internet. We knew for months now that there was some kind of tension brewing between Brooklyn Beckham and his parents, David and Victoria. But now we're hearing from Brooklyn himself. He's telling his side of the story. In his social media post, he says, quote, "I do not want to reconcile with my family. I am not being controlled. I'm standing up for myself for the first time in my life." He also says, "For my entire life, my parents have controlled narratives in the press about our family," and also adds, "Recently, I've seen with my own eyes the lengths they'll go through to place countless lies in the media, mostly at the expense of innocent people, to preserve their own facade."
For years, the Beckham family sold the ultimate fairy tale. Strong unit, elite status, untouchable vibes, everything looked clean and locked in. But that whole image has officially fallen apart, and the cracks are now impossible to ignore. Right in the middle of this storm is Brooklyn Beckham, his wife Nicola Peltz, and her billionaire father Nelson Peltz. Sources say Nelson never truly saw Brooklyn as a fit for his daughter's world. What started as quiet tension and cold looks behind the scenes has now spiraled into a full-on family showdown. This isn't just emotional drama. We're talking legal letters, strategic silence, and public moves where warmth used to be. The damage feels permanent. Lines were crossed, loyalty was tested, and no one is playing nice anymore, and that leaves everyone asking the same thing. Is Brooklyn acting on his own will? Or is he fully locked into the Peltz influence? Because behind the glossy Instagram smiles and carefully worded captions, there's a serious power shift happening. Everything hit a breaking point when Brooklyn dropped a long, emotional post aimed straight at his parents. He accused David and Victoria of spinning the story, choosing the family brand over real relationships, and repeatedly dismissing his wife. There was no filter, no soft landing. Brooklyn made it clear his loyalty was with Nicola.
Brooklyn says that his mom, Victoria Beckham, interrupted and, quote, hijacked a dance that he'd planned. This was supposed to be a romantic dance between him and his now wife, Nicola Peltz, that took place on their wedding night. He also says that his mom canceled making Nicola's wedding dress at the 11th hour. And today we actually heard from David Beckham. He was on CNBC this morning, and while he didn't address this controversy specifically, he was asked about social media and children's use of social media. So here's what he said.
They make mistakes. Children are allowed to make mistakes. That's how they learn. So that's what I try to teach my kids. But you have to sometimes let them make those mistakes as well.
So the big question now is if and when we'll actually hear from Victoria Beckham. Will she tell her side of the story? Because she is really at the center of the issues that Brooklyn says he has with the Beckham family.
What shook people wasn't just the message, but how cold and final it felt. No peace talks, no "we'll fix this," just a hard stop. And people close to the Beckhams say that moment had been building long before he went public. Something serious went down behind closed doors, and it wasn't pretty. David and Victoria Beckham reportedly sent Brooklyn a private letter. Not online, not through friends, not leaked to the press, straight to him. By that point, communication had fully collapsed, and this was their last move to reach their son. Why did it get that bad? Because Brooklyn had allegedly sent a cease and desist notice telling his parents to stop mentioning him publicly and to communicate only through lawyers. That one move sent shockwaves through the entire Beckham family. But what shook them even more was who they believed was really behind it. Sources say David and Victoria didn't think that legal threat came from Brooklyn alone. They suspected strong influence from Nicola and her side of the family, especially her billionaire father, and that changed everything. The letter David and Victoria sent back wasn't aggressive or defensive. Insiders describe it as emotional, worried, and deeply personal. No threats, no power moves, just parents asking their son for one thing: proof that he was okay. Instead of calming things down, it reportedly pushed Brooklyn even further away. Days later, the public takedown hit. Brooklyn claimed he was finally standing up for himself and clapped back hard at the idea that Nicola controls him. He said that story was totally flipped. According to Brooklyn, it was his parents who controlled his life for years.
A control freak, and I always call myself a control freak, but in a nice way. When you take someone that likes to be in control and you put them in a situation which is out of their control, it makes them feel very uncomfortable.
and he wasn't going back to that space. But this is where the public really splits, because while Brooklyn insists he's finally free, every move he's made since cutting ties tells a much more complicated story. Brooklyn's entire world has shifted, and it's now planted firmly inside the Peltz bubble. He lives in their orbit, moves in their social circle, and according to reports, only communicates with his parents through intermediaries. That's why more people are starting to say this isn't just messy family feelings, this looks like a straight-up power struggle. And if there's one moment everyone keeps dragging back into the spotlight, it's the wedding. More specifically, that now infamous first dance. Brooklyn has claimed his mother stepped into his first dance with Nicola, a moment he says left him embarrassed and put on the spot. According to his version, Nicola ran out of the room in tears. Now, depending on who you ask, the details shift. But one thing never changes. That moment flipped the entire vibe. People who were there say the energy in the room snapped instantly. What was supposed to be a joyful, once-in-a-lifetime celebration fractured right then and there. A moment meant to bring two families together turned into a deep emotional wound that never healed, even for those trying to stay neutral. That dance wasn't really about music or timing. It was about emotions, boundaries, and how things were perceived. And for Nicola, that night seems to have been the final line crossed. Reports suggest she made her stance crystal clear after the wedding, according to people close to the situation. Brooklyn was allegedly told he couldn't keep both his wife and his mother in his life. It came down to a choice, plain and simple, and Brooklyn chose Nicola. Since then, things have only gone colder. Invitations allegedly declined, family events skipped, communication completely shut down. Insiders claim Nicola has stayed firm, refusing to attend any gathering where David and Victoria Beckham are present. Whether people see this as self-protection or something more strategic really depends on where they stand. But the result is clear either way. Brooklyn Beckham is now almost completely disconnected from the family he grew up in, and that reality is hard to ignore. While Nicola stays front and center publicly, the most powerful figure in this entire situation barely says a word. Her father, Nicola Peltz, moves differently. He's a billionaire investor, a corporate heavyweight, and a man used to control, structure, and leverage. According to multiple reports, he's never been particularly impressed with Brooklyn, and that opinion hasn't changed over time. Sources claim Nelson quietly dismissed Brooklyn's career attempts from photography to cooking to lifestyle branding, seeing them as scattered and lacking focus. No public insults, no loud confrontations, just cold skepticism. And when someone with that level of wealth and influence doubts you, it hits different, especially when you're living inside their world. There's another detail that's made a lot of people uneasy about Brooklyn's future. Before the wedding, a strict prenuptial agreement was signed. If the marriage were ever to end, Brooklyn would have no access to the Peltz family fortune. Under that deal, he would leave with only what he and Nicola built together. Nothing more. The concern wasn't about money, but dependency. If the marriage ever fell apart after cutting ties with his parents, Brooklyn wouldn't just lose his wife, he'd lose his entire support system. That fear that their son placed his future fully in someone else's hands has reportedly haunted David and Victoria ever since. Despite everything, people close to the Beckhams insist the door is still open. They say David and Victoria would welcome Brooklyn back immediately. No conditions, no public apology, no demands. But Brooklyn has made his stance clear. He says he has no regrets. He believes he spoke his truth. And Brooklyn feels completely justified in walking away. Meanwhile, life keeps moving for everyone else. His siblings continue building careers. His parents stay publicly supportive. The family machine keeps running smooth as ever except for one missing piece, Brooklyn. And while he insists he's finally free, people who knew him long before Nicola and long before fame turned into family politics are starting to speak up. What they're saying isn't easy on anyone involved. One of the most unexpected voices didn't come from Hollywood at all. It came from football. Brooklyn's former youth coach from his time at Queen's Park Rangers spoke out publicly, but not in the way people expected. He didn't take sides. He didn't rush to defend David and Victoria. He didn't praise Brooklyn's choices either. Instead, he painted a picture that left a lot of people uneasy. He described a childhood shaped by anxiety, nonstop pressure and emotional distance most people can't even imagine. He talked about Brooklyn being surrounded by full-time security at just 14 years old, and how fame and money didn't equal safety, balance, or happiness. Even for someone used to working with kids from high-profile families, some moments stood out as deeply unsettling. He avoided placing blame directly, but the message landed loud and clear. Brooklyn didn't grow up normal, and that lack of normalcy left him vulnerable. Vulnerable to influence, vulnerable to pressure, vulnerable to believing that cutting everyone off was the only way to protect himself. And this is where the narrative gets uncomfortable. When you strip away emotion, one reality stands out. Nicola didn't leave her world to join Brooklyn's. Brooklyn left his world to join hers. She stayed close to her family. She kept her support system intact. She remained financially independent. Brooklyn, on the other hand, distanced himself from his parents, lost access to the structure he grew up with, and tied his emotional future to one household. And that imbalance is what has people quietly questioning whether this was freedom or something else entirely. The Peltz household, that imbalance is what has people watching the closest. Not because Nicola is some villain and not because Brooklyn is weak, but because isolation changes things fast. When one person or one family becomes your only emotional anchor, their influence grows naturally, even without saying a word. And despite being dragged into headlines again and again, Nelson Peltz has stayed completely silent. No denials, no clarifications, no public defense of his son-in-law. When it comes to Nelson Peltz, that silence isn't accidental, it's strategic. People familiar with his world describe him as blunt, decisive, and unimpressed by image alone. Reports suggest he views Brooklyn as unfocused, a young man still searching for direction while riding on a famous last name. That perception might not be fair, but when power is involved, perception hits harder than facts. Insiders say Nelson's skepticism has only grown as Brooklyn's conflict with his parents escalated. In elite circles, cutting off your family isn't seen as strength. It reads as instability. It raises eyebrows. It creates doubt. Another quiet force shaping this feud is Brooklyn's professional identity. Photography, cooking, lifestyle branding. Each new pivot has sparked public chatter and, reportedly, private concern inside the Peltz circle. While David Beckham built his legacy through discipline, consistency, and long-term focus, Brooklyn's path has been exploratory, uneven, and still unresolved. That contrast matters. When one family values legacy and endurance and the other prioritizes leverage, results, and control, friction isn't optional, it's inevitable. Insiders suggest Nelson Peltz has never been convinced Brooklyn brings enough to the table financially, strategically, or symbolically. People close to David and Victoria say the shift in their son didn't happen overnight. They claim it started quietly. Choices Brooklyn once made on his own were suddenly deferred. Conversations became filtered. Private family talks began involving lawyers. They insist their son didn't always speak this way, didn't always frame them as the problem, and didn't always see himself as controlled. Brooklyn rejects that version of events completely, but the timing is impossible to ignore. The deeper he went into his marriage, the further he drifted from his parents, and that pattern keeps raising eyebrows. One of the most revealing parts of this feud isn't who's involved, it's who isn't. Brooklyn's siblings have stayed connected to their parents, kept posting together, shown public support, and built independent lives without cutting ties. That contrast has fueled serious speculation. It suggests Brooklyn's situation might be the exception, not the rule. And that leads to an uncomfortable question. If the Beckham household was truly as controlling as Brooklyn claims, why did only one child walk away so completely and do it so publicly? Brooklyn has been praised by some for standing up for himself, but behind the scenes, insiders say the personal cost has been heavy. No casual check-ins, no spontaneous family dinners, no safety net to fall back on. Every interaction is now formal, filtered, and carefully managed. Once relationships reach that stage, rebuilding them becomes exponentially harder. Most celebrity family dramas follow a predictable cycle: shock, silence, then reconciliation. This one doesn't. Because this situation isn't just emotional, it's structural. Two powerful families. Two completely different value systems. One son caught in the middle, and the longer this drags on, the more permanent it starts to feel. That's what makes this so heavy. This isn't about one argument or one bad moment. It's about systems, influence, leverage, and long-term consequences. And that leads to the question hanging over everything. What happens if Brooklyn ever changes his mind? Walking away feels easy when you believe you're right. Coming back is the hard part. It requires humility, accountability, and forgiveness on both sides. While David Beckham and Victoria Beckham are reportedly still open to reconciliation, insiders say that openness doesn't extend to everyone involved. If Brooklyn wanted to reconnect tomorrow, the road back wouldn't be easy. And it definitely wouldn't be guaranteed. So here's where things really stand. Would Nicola even support a reunion? If Brooklyn ever changed his mind, would Nelson Peltz allow that door to reopen? Or has that line already been crossed for good? Right now, the Beckham family exists in two separate realities, one side moving forward together, the other standing firmly apart. Brooklyn insists he has no regrets. David and Victoria insist they'll wait as long as it takes. And Nicola remains constant, present, central, unwavering. Whether she's protecting her marriage or quietly shaping the narrative depends entirely on perspective. But one thing is undeniable. Brooklyn Beckham's life has fundamentally changed, and there may be no clean way back from this. So what do you think? Is this distance permanent, or is there still a chance for healing? Did Brooklyn choose freedom, or did he trade one system for another? And if he ever wanted to return, would anyone even let him? If you found this breakdown interesting, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who's been following this story, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to stick around because more stories are dropping fast. I'll see you on the next one.